Hi everyone. Welcome to English Story School. What happens when two of the greatest forces in human history rise on opposite ends of the world, each believing they're destined to lead? This isn't just a clash of countries. This is a war of ideologies, a battle of minds, a race of souls. And to understand it all, we'll take you through a story like no other. A five-part journey that begins with a question that shook the world. What if the two greatest civilizations collide? From there, we dive deep into the ancient roots that shaped these giants, unearthing the foundations they were built on. Then we step into the heat of the present, into a modern battleground of power, pride, and unstoppable progress. But we won't stop at headlines. We'll crack open the spirit within both nations, the fire that drives their people. And finally, we arrive at the spark, the unexpected truth that this clash might not be the end, but the beginning of something far greater. Part 1. What if the two greatest civilizations collide? What if the two most powerful civilizations on Earth, one forged in the fire of ancient dynasties, rooted in philosophy and ritual, and the other sculpted by revolution, capitalism, and relentless innovation, now stood face to face at the edge of a shifting world order? What if the next global chapter wasn't written with ink, but with influence, ideology, and silent wars of dominance? Who writes the rules? Who breaks them? This isn't politics. This is personal. This is legacy versus liberty. This is a story of two dreams breathing down each other's necks. And at its core, this is the truth that history tried to whisper, but the world refused to hear. When titans rise from different corners of the earth, the ground doesn't shake. The future does. Let's begin. China, the dragon. 5,000 years of civilization coursing through its veins. A land that once believed it was the Middle Kingdom, the heart around which all else rotated. From the philosophies of Confucius to the iron grip of dynasties, from the Great Wall to the Great Leap, China was never just a country. It was a consciousness, an idea of harmony, control, order, and long memory. It believed in the weight of time, the depth of tradition, and the quiet calculation of generations. Now enter America, the eagle, barely 250 years old, but loud, fast, fearless. Born in rebellion, raised on dreams, and addicted to the idea that nothing is impossible. Where China worshipped ancestors, America worshipped ambition. Where one bent toward collective identity, the other exploded with individualism. Freedom, risk, disruption, these weren't just values. They were the national currency. A dragon does not chase winds. It waits for the storm to come to it. The question isn't just who is stronger. It's deeper than that. It's who can endure more. Who can shape the soul of the next century. One plays the long game in silence. The other sprints with chaos in its wake. Let's walk into a silent war, a war of presence, not weapons. Look at the Pacific, where battleships move like chess pieces. Look at Africa, where Chinese infrastructure rises as quietly as the sun. Look at Silicon Valley, where American code and Chinese hardware live in an uneasy marriage. The war is here. We just gave it a different name. But wait, this isn't just about strategy. It's about people. In Shanghai, a 12-year-old girl learns AI development in school. In Detroit, a college dropout launches a startup in his garage. Two stories, one world, both racing for relevance. This is not just East versus West. This is mind versus machine, philosophy versus profit, patience versus speed. Empires fall not because they lose strength, but because they lose purpose. Now imagine the collision. Imagine diplomacy not as dialogue, but as performance. Imagine trade not as exchange, but as leverage. Imagine the internet as a battleground, satellites as spies, and social media as silent propaganda. The question is not who will strike first. It is who will last longer, who can evolve faster, who can carry the weight of a billion hopes without breaking. Because here's the raw truth. China doesn't want to become America, and America will never bow to becoming China. This is the century's cold fire. We are watching two civilizations that were never meant to meet, now competing for the right to lead the human story forward. One holding scrolls, the other waving flags. And yet, in their confrontation, something beautiful emerges. Questions of who we are, what we value, and what future we dare to imagine. When two storms meet, they don't destroy each other. They create a new sky. So this is not just the story of China versus America. It's the story of ambition versus restraint, of noise versus silence, of the ancient versus the untested. This is only the beginning. Let's move forward into the roots of these giants to see where the first seeds of dominance were sown. Let the journey continue. Part 2. The Roots of the Giants. Long before skyscrapers pierced the Beijing sky and Silicon Valley gave birth to the digital age, two radically different seeds were sown in lands that would one day stand toe to toe on the world stage. China's roots go deep, deeper than conquest, deeper than kings. It was more than a nation. It was an ecosystem of philosophy, ritual, silence, and scale. Over 2,000 years ago, while the Western world still fumbled through tribal wars, China was already mapping stars, building empires, and mastering bureaucracy. The Great Wall wasn't just a defense mechanism. It was a statement. We will last. Gunpowder, the compass, paper, printing, these weren't lucky accidents. They were the outcomes of a society obsessed with continuity and wisdom. Confucianism taught respect, structure, the art of knowing your place in a world that thrived on stability. Every citizen was part of a greater whole. The emperor didn't just rule a nation, he sustained the heavens. Meanwhile, on the other side of the timeline, a storm was quietly brewing. The American story didn't rise from palaces or temples. It exploded out of revolution, gunshots, inked constitutions, and a desperate hunger for freedom. America wasn't born, it erupted. The East builds dynasties. The West breaks chains. In 1776, while China already had over 100 generations of recorded history, the United States declared itself into existence. No kings, no emperors, just ideas, liberty, opportunity, reinvention. America wasn't about bloodlines, but belief. Immigrants arrived with nothing but the courage to dream, and from that chaos, a fierce, volatile genius was born. China had order. America had energy. Where Chinese culture revolved around collective legacy, American culture charged toward individual greatness. One found strength in stillness, the other in disruption. Think of a mountain and a wildfire. One stands, one spreads, both unstoppable, but in wildly different ways. The roots of power are not in the soil. They're in the stories we choose to believe. In ancient China, scholars passed down sacred texts, memorized lineages, honored their elders with quiet reverence. Everything had its place. Harmony was heaven. Across oceans and centuries, American frontiersmen broke the wilderness with grit and grit alone. Farmers, rebels, inventors, all living on the edge of uncertainty, all believing they could shape their fate with bare hands. But here's the spark. The United States, though young, was not weak. Its lack of tradition became its weapon. It could pivot. It could evolve. It could challenge itself again and again without losing sleep over heritage. And China? It didn't just survive dynasties. It absorbed them. When invaded, it folded the invader into its soul. When fractured, it waited patiently to rebuild. Two giants, one old, one young, both forged not just by geography or history, but by mindset. Tradition is a fortress. Innovation is a fire. Both protect and destroy. And this is where tension brews. America looks at China and sees control. China looks at America and sees chaos. But the truth is more complicated. Control can bring progress. Chaos can bring creation. The roots are not just deep, they're tangled, alive, constantly shifting. In a rural Chinese village, a grandfather teaches calligraphy to a boy who may never need to write by hand. In an inner-city American school, a girl designs a drone on a borrowed laptop. Both are reaching forward, but with different compasses. So which system bends? And which one breaks? China survives by absorbing shock. It reshapes without letting go. America survives by exploding and rebuilding again and again. You don't measure strength by who resists the storm. You measure it by who becomes the wind. This isn't just past versus present. It's foundation versus flexibility. One was carved over centuries in stone and silence. The other burst forth with noise and passion. Yet now, they grow toward each other, competing, colliding, learning, shadowing, and all the while, the world watches. Because in their roots lie the blueprints of everything that comes next. Part 3. The modern battleground, power, pride, and progress. Now we arrive at today, a time when skyscrapers are no longer just buildings, they're symbols. When algorithms wage invisible wars. When money flows faster than missiles. And when influence is not dropped from planes, but streamed, downloaded, and injected into the hearts and minds of billions. Trade wars? Tech wars? Diplomatic standoffs? That was just the warm-up. Today, the battlefield is everywhere, from boardrooms to backdoors, from cyberspace to space stations. The game has changed. It's no longer about conquering land. It's about colonizing thought. The sharpest weapon of the 21st century is not a missile. It's a narrative. America, the cultural behemoth, dominates entertainment and tech. From Netflix to NVIDIA, from Apple to OpenAI. Its superpower? Soft influence. The power to shape trends, dreams, ideologies. It exports not just products, but a mindset. Every teenager dancing on TikTok. Every entrepreneur pitching an idea in a garage. That's America flexing without lifting a finger. But China? China is playing a longer, quieter game. With its Belt and Road Initiative, China isn't just building railways. It's laying pipelines of loyalty. It's not just selling products. It's embedding presence. Ports in Pakistan, highways in Kenya, stadiums in Sri Lanka. It's buying trust, leasing influence, constructing a future where the dragon no longer hides, it leads. In the modern world, empires are built with cement, code, and contracts. In a Manhattan boardroom, a venture capitalist nods as a young founder pitches a decentralized finance app that promises to change everything. Their language? Disruption, speed, scaling. Across the world, in a high-rise in Shenzhen, a teenage prodigy runs simulations of AI-driven currency systems that could redefine banking in Southeast Asia. His goal? Stability, control, strategy. This isn't war with bombs. It's war with brains. It's about who controls the rails of the next century. Data, chips, supply chains, semiconductors, satellite networks, quantum computing. Spy balloons? TikTok bans? These are surface ripples. Beneath them, massive undercurrents are shifting. America fears infiltration. China fears fragmentation. The future won't be owned by the loudest nation. It'll be owned by the one that listens the deepest. In Washington, D.C., policy experts scramble to draft guardrails on artificial intelligence. In Beijing, tech giants and state power blend, forming a unified push into facial recognition, fintech, and surveillance technology. The difference? America separates business and state. China synchronizes them. The result? Two systems charging into the same storm, with radically different strategies. One betting on freedom to spark the next innovation, the other betting on structure to sustain it. But this race isn't just about tech. It's about hearts. Hollywood films still command global screens, but Chinese cinema is rising fast, telling stories rooted in pride, tradition, and power. Education systems across Africa are using Chinese-built platforms. American universities still hold prestige, but Chinese research institutions are catching up with startling speed. This isn't a sprint. It's a relay race across industries, borders, and generations. And behind the scripted smiles at summits and joint declarations of peace, everyone knows the truth. Only one vision of progress will dominate. Only one voice will shape the new global norm. Power never sleeps. It only shifts hands. And when it moves, the whole world feels the tremor. But there's another layer beneath all this. One even more dangerous. Perception. Each side believes it is protecting something sacred. For America, it's liberty. The right to choose. The right to challenge. The right to reinvent. For China, it's legacy. The right to rise. The right to reclaim. The right to not be dictated. That's what makes this battleground so explosive. It's not just about power. It's about identity. And identity, once threatened, fights not with logic, but with soul. So what happens when pride meets pride? When progress meets resistance? When ambition meets ambition? The world doesn't get a peaceful rise. It gets a tightrope walk across thunder. Part 4. The spirit behind the superpowers. Let's talk soul, because a nation is not just GDP and military might. It's what burns inside its people. It's not what you can count. It's what you can feel. Spirit is not printed in newspapers or posted in stats. It's whispered in lullabies, shouted in protests, passed down in the quiet sacrifices no one sees. In China, children are taught the value of sacrifice, honor, and endurance. Generations are woven tightly together by tradition and duty. The family name is sacred. Every success is shared. Every burden, collective. There's strength in silence, pride in patience. Their dreams are not just their own. They belong to the past and the future. Across the Pacific, in America, the spirit beats to a different rhythm. Kids are told, you could be anything. They're raised to chase stars, break molds, question everything. Individuality is oxygen. Risk is a language. And failure? It's not the end, it's the fuel. One culture teaches you to honor your bloodline. The other tells you to rewrite your name. One nurtures discipline. The other, innovation. One says, we are a people. The other says, be yourself. This is where ideology becomes identity, and identity becomes destiny. But here's the twist, the part no headline captures. What happens when these spirits start to blur? In urban Beijing, a teenage vlogger dreams of becoming the next global influencer. She dances to American beats, codes in Python, and imagines a life beyond national lines. Meanwhile, in rural Ohio, a blue-collar worker reads Sun Tzu at night, seeking ancient wisdom in a world that moves too fast. This is the real suspense. The cross-pollination of civilizations. The dragon starts to dream in Hollywood colors. The eagle starts to seek ancient calm. When lions and dragons dance, the world holds its breath. We're not just watching geopolitics. We're watching a human remix. Cultures leaking into each other like watercolor, creating something no one can fully control. In Shanghai, schools blend Confucian ethics with Silicon Valley problem solving. In Boston, meditation rooms inspired by Chinese Zen line the halls of venture capital firms. Minds are shifting, values are bending, and yet both nations guard their core. China still believes in continuity, in central control, in preserving harmony. America still believes in confrontation, in reinvention, in disrupting the system. But the younger generations, they're not bound by old lines. They're global. You raise a child with your values, but the world raises them with its questions. This spirit clash is more than cultural. It's spiritual. What drives a civilization? Is it the need to belong or the need to break free? Is it memory or is it imagination? In this invisible arena, there are no armies, just algorithms, no treaties, just thoughts. And every scroll, every click, every viral video is a small tug of war between belief systems. This is a quiet revolution. A Chinese artist paints graffiti in the alleyways of Paris. An American rapper blends Mandarin into his lyrics. A mother in Beijing and a father in Texas both tell their children to dream big, even if their definitions of big are galaxies apart. The most powerful empires are not the ones that conquer land, but the ones that influence dreams. So, what happens when a disciplined society begins to hunger for freedom? And when a free society begins to ache for stability? You get a global identity crisis. The eagle wants to glide higher. The dragon wants to rise faster. And somewhere in the smoke between pride and purpose, they begin to mirror each other, not in politics, but in people. And this is where the future starts to stir. Part 5, the clash is not the end, it's the spark. Well, now we ask, who will win? The dragon or the eagle? The legacy or the liberty? The disciplined strategist or the fearless innovator? It's tempting to draw a line, place our bets, and prepare for a final clash. But the truth? Maybe neither will win. And maybe both already have. Because this isn't just a contest of economies or governments. This is a mirror held up to the world, showing us what happens when two unmatched forces push each other to the brink, not out of hatred, but out of purpose. This is not East versus West. It's a collision of human potential, of ancient memory against restless ambition, of a civilization that waited for the world to catch up and one that tried to outrun time itself. Real power is not in conquering others. It's in awakening yourself. And that's what's happening now. In boardrooms and classrooms, in art studios and tech labs, the next generation isn't choosing sides. They're blending codes. They're borrowing courage from both ends of the earth. A Chinese teen launching a startup inspired by Silicon Valley. An American designer drawing from Taoist harmony. This is no longer a game of winners and losers. It's growth versus fear. Tradition versus transformation. The past screaming at the future to slow down. The future daring the past to let go. So maybe, just maybe, the real victory isn't domination. Maybe it's coevolution, a mutual ignition, a raising of standards, a friction that sparks fire in the whole world. The Cold War was about walls. This era is about windows, transparency, curiosity, challenge, and perhaps most importantly, change. Clashes don't always destroy. Sometimes they sculpt. And as these two titans keep rising, their shadows stretch across every country, every culture, every citizen. But within those shadows, we see outlines of something new, a world that might not be controlled by one idea, but elevated by many. Because in the end, it might not be about whose flag flies highest, but whose values reach deepest. Will the future belong to the power that adapts faster, or to the one that holds truer to its roots? Or maybe it will belong to the ones who dare to build a new spirit altogether. A mindset that borrows China's resilience, America's audacity, Africa's rhythm, Europe's wisdom, and the Middle East's fire. A mindset that's global. History doesn't repeat itself. It challenges the next generation to do better. So let the world watch. Let the leaders posture. Let the numbers roll across stock tickers and election screens. Because beneath it all, a spark is forming. Not the spark of conflict, the spark of creation. And that's the moment history is waiting for. With that said, thanks for watching, and until next time.